Alright, what's really going on? Bitcoin, cryptocurrency today. Going to be taking a look at ADA against USDT. Going to be taking a look at some of these key technical aspects of price action moving forward. Going to be looking at some of these pivotal areas of support and resistance I believe are going to be interacting with in the very near future here. Price action seems to be, rather sideways, aggressively sideways at this crazy consolidation above $1 in between, kind of like just like $2.50 almost. Are we bullish enough to interact with that, like, $2 multi-dollar Cardano kind of range, or are we gonna, see some kind of lower levels that we kind of haven't seen since kind of the beginning of this year? Are you bullish? Are you bearish on Cardano? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you trade? Do you hold? Or do you let the price action unfold? What are you doing with your bag if you have one? Are you scalping the market? Are you trading during this kind of up and down between these kind of key ranges? Or, are you just holding through all this sideways, bullish enough to think that Cardano is going to be, at the multi-dollar, perhaps $10 range? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now jump right into it. To kind of recap, this very bullish price action since the kind of end of consolidation, kind of at like between September and October of like 2020, like beginning of November, started to break up through significant resistance found around 13 cents. Traded sideways, I kind of along it before rallying upward again. Consolidated in a more bullish manner upon breaking kind of like 25 cents toward 38 cents, which was that kind of final resistance that, before we kind of broke into this like crazier phase of accumulation, kind of nearing the dollar to multi-dollar range. And so now we appear to be, for a period of time, bouncing in between. I had these kind of like two kind of zones here. This lower zone of like 94 cents and $1.08 to be some kind of like a critical kind of local sort of like support moving forward. That we kind of like found resistance off of at the kind of like beginning of February of this year. We ended up breaking through it that same month, but we have been interacting kind of along it during this kind of phase, a kind of like accumulation between kind of like the end of February and what appears to be sort of like still, but between kind of like end of February and the beginning of May, we traded along that kind of like $1.08 sort of zone there, and traded with long resistance found around $1.40 and $1.49. That was kind of like a little range of local resistance that we kind of bounced off of as we traded along the $1.08 level there. We like broke above that at the beginning of May of this year to set some like higher highs at like the kind of like $2.44 like level there, and so that was some more bullish, short-term bullish kind of like swing highs, some more price action up in that range. But momentum changed very abruptly, and the sell-off occurred, and we returned to these kind of like lower levels, finding support ultimately between kind of $1.08 and above 94 cents. We are now back at the kind of like upper zone of like the $1.39 to kind of like 49, kind of like upper range that was resistance for like a month and a bit, like not so long ago. And so now I suspect price action does look rather bullish enough to kind of continue like above, hopefully kind of $1.48, but realistically I think we can stay above $1.39 to perhaps make our way to this kind of ascending trend line that I started kind of back at the sort of like beginning of the COVID crash back in sort of like March of 2020. We have been interacting with that trend line kind of like during this uptrend, and so I believe further interaction with it will support kind of the trend upward in a kind of a more bullish manner. And so I suspect price action, from the looks of things, will kind of stay sideways enough to kind of retest it a few more times before continuing upward, and we are likely to see that kind of like multi $2 level there, $2.50 kind of like USD there per Cardano, kind of like in the coming kind of future here. But when we consider EngineeringRobo, along with the Fibba, Zucchini, Illuminati, Lamborghini geometry lines of angles, we can see a new perspective come into play. I do believe these are going to be some key zones that we're going to find some interaction off of. The 0.618 just above that $1.48 line, so that 618 is at $1.53. I suspect that to be a kind of like very bullish, kind of like local support that we could find support along that we could be more sort of like short-term bullish about if we were to hold that. I do suspect price action to find its way to like $1.39, perhaps a couple more times though. We have the 0.5 line at $1.24. That's going to be a more kind of like bearish target. Say we fail to hold $1.38. The 0.382 line at 95 cents is going to be a very, very bearish target if we start to break kind of like all those zones and my ascending trend line. So we do have these super sell 2, sell 3, like very potent sell suggestions present at the moment, but the fundamentals of Cardano seem to be kind of holding it, quite sideways against all this kind of like bearish technical sell pressure. The 0.786 line is going to be some resistance found around $1.95, in my opinion. We're likely to get kind of little mini rejections off of that before we see interaction with that kind of $2.40 something cents level. So while there is a lot of like technical kind of like sell pressure present and Cardano is kind of rather overbought, the fundamentals of Cardano are kind of holding it quite sideways, and the overall bullishness of the trend long term does seem to be intact, in my opinion, until we start seeing perhaps some interaction at these kind of much lower levels, like sub a dollar. We can still kind of stay rather long term bullish on Cardano. A new perspective comes into play when we consider the fear and greed index for Cardano here. When we consider, just how high up and how long it's been up in the kind of FOMO zone here. We can see kind of why price action has been kind of the way it has. We have very volatile up and down, as price action in the FOMO zone. This is where FOMO is present, tops are bought, and trends continue. And so, I mean, what happens in the FOMO zone? Sometimes prices get up in there, set some kind of like higher highs, but usually they get rejected out, and we kind of come sideways to perhaps interact with them again. So the FOMO zone has very, very high sell pressure. But any FOMO, like I said, fear of missing out, present zone, there's going to be a lot of tops bought, bottoms bought, and the rally continues. And so sometimes, price action becomes very volatile up and down for a period of time against the very high sell pressure. And so we could very well see perhaps some interactions outside of this FOMO zone in the very coming future here, as we are nearing it, nearing our kind of end of it. Although if price action were to remain up in this very volatile area, some like tens of percentages in either direction could occur. And so the fear and greed index is typically used for more mid and long term ish kind of investors kind of thing, rather than traders that prefer to buy and trade the market during the kind of sideways up and down. The fear and greed index would be used for like holders, let's say, that accumulate during kind of like weeks in the accumulation kind of phases. Say you accumulated your last time to buy in was like the end of May of like 2020, so you were accumulating around like 5 cents, and then you sold at our first interaction with the FOMO zone. You would have made 876% in 255 days. Say you held all the way to like the highs of the FOMO zone, you would have made 4,184% in 354 days, or less than a year. If you're trading to current levels, you still made 2,900% in just over a year. And so like I said, the fear and FOMO zone is typically used for more kind of like mid to long-term holders rather than kind of traders. Now, lots going on in the FOMO zone here. Very volatile price action. When we consider the price of Cardano against the price of Bitcoin, we can see a kind of like similar phase of accumulation between this kind of very much wider range. I believe the Fibba zucchini lines are going to print some better pivot points that we can see in this kind of like local zones here. I see an ultimate wider range of like 3090 Satoshi and 5305 Satoshi is going to be some kind of local support and resistance moving forward as we bounce up and down kind of between these zones. When we consider EngineeringRobo along with the Fibba Illuminati lines of horizontal and vertical axes, we can see new perspective come into play when we consider this kind of sell for against the price of Bitcoin, suggesting some short-term bearish price action. We have a moon against the Cardano's price against the price of Bitcoin, which is suggesting some long-term bullish price action, and we have price action above the 200 daily moving average, which is long-term bullish in my opinion as well. With the sell for, though, we could expect some perhaps bearish consolidation against the price of Bitcoin, and we could see some lower levels as we interact with that 0.786 line around 4061 Satoshi, the 0.618 line around 3271 Satoshi, and then we have just kind of like the sort of top of the Fibonacci range here at 5051 Satoshi, which is that kind of swing high that we printed back at the 16th of May. And so I do suspect we're going to make our way toward that 0.786 line, 4065 Satoshi, and perhaps that 0.618 is going to be a more likely target if we can't hold that 0.786. So lots going on for Cardano against the price of Bitcoin here. We are still long-term bullish, in my opinion, with the moon and the 200 daily moving average being, we're still being above that moving average. And so we are still quite overbought, and we are in the FOMO zone against USDT. So we could very well see some prolonged sideways or some kind of lower levels, as buying opportunities before we interact with those kind of higher highs again. When we consider Bitcoin itself, we can see how this sell-off is playing out. We can see support found around my key zone kind of here. We seem to have price action interacting very nicely with the 0.5 line, 34,300, and the 0.618 line is still going to be that local resistance, I believe. Price action came down to interact with it. We have a lot of wicks off of like 32K is going to be some significant support if we get rejected off of a lower high, a coming lower high here. I do believe some mini resistance is going to be at 37,430. That's perhaps is going to be like a significant sell point between like 37.4 and like 38. There's going to be some local resistance that we could print some lower highs that could send us through that 0.5 line to my 32K line. And so there's like like it's very there's like plenty of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the market at the moment, causing some very volatile up and down price action. The fundamentals of Bitcoin, I believe, are what's holding us kind of through all these technical kind of like sell indicators, like the super sell and sell for Engineering Robo, and we have price action below that 200 daily. Those are all bearish suggestions for like many traders, and so sell pressure is going to be very abundant, kind of under that 200 daily and that 0.618 line of 41K, like I've been saying. But I do suspect 34K to 32K to be a range that we will likely hold. Although we could very well interact with the kind of high 20s again, as we do have wicks, and into kind of like into like 29K on certain exchanges. And so, I mean, it is not impossible for Bitcoin to interact with kind of between 20K and 29K again before it sees its all-time highs, because anything is possible in crypto. Overall, we are still quite bullish, in my opinion, even though we are going to see some rather short-term volatile price action. I believe multi-$1,000 moves up and down are pending as we stay below this 200 daily. Until we can get ourselves above that, we're going to see some very volatile, perhaps midterm, bearish sideways kind of price action. Now, thank you for hearing my analysis. Let me know in the comments down below. Are you trading? Are you holding during all this crazy sideways? Are you like shorting and making calls, puts and calls, shorts and longs on this ups and downs of the crazy sideways, or are you diamond hands hold through the whole thing and waiting for all-time highs again and then some? I still believe we're going to see 100K this year, in my opinion. Although some crazy sideways and accumulation might be what Bitcoin needs to before it gets there. But let me know in the comments down below. Are you bullish? Are you bearish? Thank you for tuning in. Check out Engineering Robo free with the link in the description. Subscribe here on YouTube. Check out all the other social media down below. And tune in for the next one.